From the News Channel 5 Network, this is Inside Politics.
Hello, everyone. I'm News Channel 5 political analyst Pat Nolan. Welcome to Inside Politics. When we put this program together every week, we seek to bring in guests who bring wisdom, experience, insight, and perspective on the issues of the day. That's certainly true with this week's guest on Inside Politics. He's a former journalist, now a blogger and a columnist for the TENNESSEAN, as well as a top aide to former Governor Lamar Alexander. He was once the head of the Nashville Area Chamber of Commerce, a public relations and government relations guru, and an author of two very insightful books on Tennessee politics. Of course, we're talking about Keel Hunt. Keel, welcome back to Inside Politics. Great to have you back on the program.
Thanks, Pat. It's good to be back.
Let's begin with the national scene. The party conventions are over. The race is set for the final 2-month sprint to Election Day, although it'll be starting much earlier than that with some of the early voting. What kind of contest is this going to be with both sides saying nobody will be safe in their homes if their opponent is elected? It sounds like a race to the bottom.
Yeah, I agree with you, Pat. And it sounds a lot like the last two national elections. I mean, particularly the U.S. Senate race down here in Tennessee in 2018. You know, suddenly we were hearing about an invasion of bad people, and that vanished on Election Day, apparently. And we're hearing similar themes now that all have to do more with fear and the reaction to fear than anything of substance.
All this discord comes and as we're also facing the virus pandemic, which we didn't have in 2016, but we have 5 million people over that infected and approaching 200,000 American dead. Are we perhaps heading to the most disconnected, most divisive election since 1860, which is right before the Civil War began?
Well, it very well might be. You know, we have a lot of, it seems to be a contest between light and dark. That's pretty for sure. People are worried. People are genuinely concerned, you know, in their homes, and but it's not about what we're being frightened by in terms of collapse of government and so forth. Those seem to be maybe red herrings, but people are worried. You're worried about your children and how schools are reopening. You see all of that unfolding in what appears to be an absence of national policy and national leadership, and that is concerning. And I think probably the election may wind up turning on that kind of thing, not another advancing invasion force that may failed to materialize.
The economy has been absolutely decimated by the shutdowns that occurred and then the slow reopenings. We've got high unemployment at double digits or slightly below. We've got a lot of businesses closed still. There was some help early on from the federal government. Now it appears the administration and both houses of Congress are kind of deadlocked on what to do going forward in the future. Some are even saying maybe we don't need to do anymore. Is our political gridlock in Washington now threatening to make our economic situation even worse?
Well, of course it is. Of course it is. And, I think I've decided for myself that the only way to understand a whole lot of this is to see the, any national policy that touches on these very serious issues as having more to do with chaos and intended chaos than any kind of solution, Pat. And I think that, once you kind of try to see it through that lens, a lot falls into place. I mean, why have we had so many reversals on the part of the national administration with respect to how serious this pandemic is? I mean, everybody knows it's serious and it's real who's looking at the facts and the science of the situation. And it only seems to be, when you tune in to see somebody's briefing, that there seems to be confusion. I mean, we know what we're dealing with. Broadly speaking, we know that families are losing loved ones. We know that we have to be very careful if we go outside the house, and that's proper, I mean, but why is there this ridicule of the idea of wearing masks? I mean, it is intentional, and I just feel like it's more Objectively, it's more about sowing chaos because that fits the president's way of doing things. It's a real shame.
On top of all the problems with the economy and with the virus, we now have all these problems, rising unrest across the country, complaints about social injustice, police brutality, charges of systematic racism, all of it usually being exacerbated by the killing of black men by white police officers. We seem to have made some strides in race relations, at least we thought so over the last several years, but Keel, you and I both have enough gray in our head to wonder, have we gone back to the 1960s?
Yeah, well, you certainly get to that conclusion, Pat. I think I think it's as helpful to our understanding of it, generally speaking, to focus on our cities and our communities as much as on the White House. I mean, we're getting no solid information out of the White House that is not contradicted the very next day. So none of that's helpful. The important research, the important science, understanding this is going on in places like Vanderbilt Medical Center, Meharry Medical College, the Oak Ridge National Lab, and that's very important. It needs to not be interrupted. There needs to be a vaccine or more than one vaccine ASAP. And in the absence of that, we have a lot of, it seems to me like dithering on the part, and I'm again referring not only to the White House here, but we've seen reversals in our state administration about how much information is or isn't going to be shared with the public about where the virus has been detected. How about schools? And this is, at least causing a lot of anxiety on the part of a lot of good people and their families.
You've written two books about Tennessee politics, one called Coup, the other one Crossing the Aisles, both of them based on situations in Tennessee, many situations where political leaders of both parties came together to work across the aisle to solve major challenges. In our current political system, both nationally and in Tennessee, have our leaders just lost interest or the ability to even be interested in crossing the aisle?
Well, that's a good question. As we try to keep track of what's going on at the state capitol, in particular, it seems to be more driven by actions and reactions that have to do with fear, fear of one's political opponents, or fear of one's own powerful supermajority in the legislature. And to get more specific, I'm referring to the Republican supermajority, which is, holding sway and seems to be holding sway over much of what Governor Lee and his people are trying to accomplish. There was an early skirmish between them about the issue of Tennessee continuing or not to be a refugee resettlement area. And I was proud of Governor Lee for holding to his position that he said, yes, we will. That's the right thing to do. He got a lot of blowback from the conservative Republican members of the state legislature, and they have a lot of power with the majority to that extent. And then more recently, there's all of this back and forth about what kind of information are we going to share with the people about the coronavirus and what's happening in our schools. And I guess they've settled on a course of action, and that is we're going to share school-based information. Well, parents need to know that. You need to make your own decision. I mean, there's trouble enough with the way remote learning is going on, virtual learning, and all of that's new. I mean, it's not necessarily a bad thing that there are a few stumbles in how all that technology or the lack of technology is being utilized, because this is new for teachers as well as families and children.
Keel Hunt's our guest on Inside Politics. We'll be back again for the second round of interview and talk with Keel after this break.